Welcome to dojo.live, the place where top minds in travel and hospitality check in to share insights and breakthroughs shaping the industry. Brought to you by Encora, your trusted partner for AI, cloud, and data-driven innovation. Enjoy your stay. Hello, and welcome to another episode of Encora's Dojo Live, where we have candid conversations with industry leaders who are tackling the biggest tech challenges in travel and hospitality. I am your host, Kim Lantis, and today is May 8th, 2025. We're back with episode number 7, lucky number 7, in our series, Redefining the Digital Storefront, Insights from Hospitality's Direct Booking Leaders. Today's topic, from click to call to confirmation, rethinking the booking experience. And of course, I'm not going to be doing this alone. I'm joined by my fantastic co-host, America Guerrero.
Hello, everyone. It's nice to be here. Hey, Josh.
Hey,
hello, America. And hello, Josh. That's right. Here to share how the embedded booking engine and the reintroduction of voice is tipping the scales for direct bookings is Josh Graham, head of market development at Cloudbeds. Josh, welcome to the show once again. It's always a great pleasure to learn from you.
Well, thanks for having me back. But Kim, you and I need to gang up on America a little bit because she got to go to Tianguis and neither one of us did. So
she did, and got to go to the Cloudbeds, hosted Lucha Libre, and it looked like a great time.
It was super fun event. I never thought that going to a work related trip was going to be like this. So thank you so much for
inviting more industry conferences.
I can't wait for next year. I don't know if you're making like a 15 quinceañera party, Cloudbeds, Mexican or something related. I mean, I'm going to be there.
We'll see what we'll do. I mean, we went in Berlin for ITB. We rented out an entire like Berlin dance club for electro nights. Tianguis was Lucha Libre, and we may have a surprise coming for high tech. Indianapolis is not quite as exciting as either Berlin or Tijuana, to be honest, but we'll see what we can pull off to do that. So
we'll make it as exciting as we can.
Yeah, exactly. Indiana is very flat, not a lot, so we'll figure something out. But we'll
figure something out. Yeah. All right. So Josh, on your last Dojo Live appearance, you challenged the industry's long-standing dichotomy between the all-in-one and hub-and-spoke PMS platforms. So rather than choosing one over the other, you introduced us to a third way, a more flexible, hybrid approach where core functionality can be delivered within the platform, yet still allow properties to plug in their best-of-breed kind of solutions when needed. Now, this perspective we saw embraces full diversity in hospitality, from boutique eco-lodges to the mega resorts.
Yep.
We're talking about choice. We're talking about scalability, adaptability. Today, we're continuing in that same spirit, but this conversation is going to be zooming into the most critical components of the tech stack, or one of, rather, and that is the booking engine. So can you briefly walk us through how Cloudbeds sees the role of the booking engine now, rather than PMS, evolving in today's hospitality tech stack?
Yeah, absolutely. And so I think here, like a lot of things, I like to almost take a step back, quickly look at the history, right? Because it's kind of hard to, I think, understand the future if you don't understand the past. And so historically, booking engines have been really built by two groups of companies, right? You have these legacy PMS companies who treated booking engines as kind of like afterthoughts, things you give away, right? Honestly didn't put that much thought into them, right? I mean, they're like, okay, you book a room. And then you had other innovative hospitality tech companies who saw those gaps, right, and built either an entire company or a business line around building that better mousetrap, right? But what you then do with that is create more vendor complexity and then other integration headaches for hoteliers, right? And so, shocker, here, I think there's a third way that's a best choice for a plurality of hotels, right? Maybe not for every hotel, because you certainly get some types where the booking process can be really unique. But what I really see is companies like Cloudbeds or CRS companies would be another example, that are a good focus here, that build booking engines that are highly focused on conversion and have the simple integrations, so you're not creating yet another integration point. Because I think that's where oftentimes these things fall apart, is either the integration points or just additional vendor complexity.
All right. So that's, I seem to make this a tradition here on our show, but that's going to be the definition for dummies, right? Once more, that what you're talking about is the embedded piece, the embedded booking engine. Define that for me. And what does that do, or how does that differ from the traditional ones that you're referring to?
Yeah, so at the simplest level, right, an embedded booking engine allows a user to go from engaging with the website to a shopping cart without opening a new tab, right? Because often when you do that, you sort of like leave the web page and then leave the user feeling like Dorothy when she realized she wasn't in Kansas anymore, right? And so that's the simplest explanation. At a slightly more technical level, it means a native web integration without redirects or iframes.
All right, I got it. So now the crux of this, why does it matter? Okay, so what benefits does this embedded booking engine bring? You talked a little bit about the friction in the guest journey, or I guess lack of in this case.
Mm-hmm.
What is it specifically designed to eliminate, and what's it bringing?
Yeah, well, look, I mean, so our immersive experience 2.0, which is what we're calling our booking engine, at the top line, it reduces the booking engine from sort of a clunky afterthought into a high performance sales funnel, right? It reduces guest hesitation, it boosts direct bookings, and it gives hoteliers the data visibility that they've been missing, right? So let's talk about what it eliminates and what it improves, right? So it eliminates redirect fatigue. Right? Traditional booking engines often send users off-site, right? Sometimes it can be to a third party, which kind of breaks brand trust. It causes drop-off, right? It eliminates that slow, disjointed UX that you often find with iframe-based engines, because they often load slowly. They just kind of feel like an outdated plugin. Right? So ours is web native, it's modern, fast across all devices, especially mobile, where so many bookings are happening now, right? It also eliminates that brand inconsistency. So although you've got a lot of providers that go to great lengths to kind of enable hotels to customize and style the website, or the booking engine, so it looks like the website, a lot of times there's just something says to a user, this is different, this isn't quite the same, and you often lose that sort of brand consistency. And it also eliminates, and this is really important, data blind spots, right? So a lot of times cross-domain redirects break analytics. And so if you keep everything under one roof, hoteliers can actually track the full user journey and really close that attribution loop. So that's what it eliminates, but it also improves things on the flip side. So it improves guest trust, right? Guests see this consistent professional experience, and it sort of signals legitimacy, right? Because a lot of people sometimes, especially if you've never stayed at a property somewhere far away, you don't know whether you're trusting this or not, right? Mm-hmm. You see more direct conversions because that faster, smoother UX leads to lower abandonment rates and higher direct booking revenue. So fewer clicks, fewer surprises. I mentioned, mobile in terms of, it eliminated a lot of that slow mobile load time. And so Immersive 2.0 is designed mobile first, not as an afterthought, right? So it's clean and it's optimized for people who are on the go. It also enables us to put more upsell opportunities into the booking engine, because that way, since hotels have more control over the flow, they can surface upsells packages at the right moments. And you see better marketing ROI because now that you've eliminated those problems that you often get with data blind spots, you integrate Google Analytics so it supports that full funnel tracking, campaign attribution, and retargeting.
Nice. Can we talk about those reports? So let's go deeper into the analytics, because the booking and the booking happens on the same domain, right? Cloudbeds introduce tools like Google Tag Manager to track the entire guest journey without data gaps.
Yeah.
Why is that such a big deal for hoteliers, and what kind of visibility or performance gains can they realistically expect?
Yeah, absolutely. So look, I mean, if you're not a marketer, booking happening on the same domain might sound kind of like a technical side note, but I don't want to undersell this here, right? For marketers and operators, this is literally a data liberation movement. And why does that matter? Why do I say that, right? Because in traditional setups, bookings often happen off-site or off the main website. So marketing attribution, it's lost in translation. You're retargeting, you constantly have pixel fire drills, right? Forget funnel tracking, it's MIA at the moment of truth. And multi-session users often get tracked like strangers every single time, right? And so that's why Immersive 2.0 is a big deal, because it solves those things by keeping users on your domain from start to finish, right? So you've got clean, continuous data flows, Google Tag Manager, Google Analytics 4. You don't have to duct tape and baling wire solutions together, right? But I'll go even a step further. So we also have a hosted booking engine as well, but we made sure we didn't leave that one totally behind, because there's some people that prefer that. So we actually have Google Tag Manager on that hosted version with zero dev work, right? So we actually try to make sure you're covered from both sides. But you asked the question about what you gain, right? And in that regard, you gain things like end-to-end funnel visibility. So the full guest journey from first ad click to final confirmation with zero blind spots. You get those real ROI insights. So you can actually start to see which marketing dollars are driving bookings, not just site visits, right? So you're optimizing with data, not hope. You can do smarter retargeting, right? Because you might want to retarget someone who comes to a website and then abandons while looking at the spa page. You might want to retarget them differently than someone who comes to the spa page, enters the booking funnel, and then exits. So because you can track them all the way through, you can do differentiated retargeting. And then finally, you've got clean data, no headaches, right? It all just works with Google Tag Manager and Google Analytics 4. You don't have workarounds. You're not slacking your devs at 10 p.m. trying to figure something out because you realize you're trying to run a report. And so it's just a smoother, better experience.
Nice. I before we transition the conversation here, I do have a question in terms of the analytics. This all sounds amazing, but I hear it, and to me, it feels, or I just could feel overwhelming. Like, this is so amazing, this is so awesome, but it's so much.
Yeah.
Is there tips that you have for those people who are working with this data, these types of analytics that are so awesome, but then having to make those decisions? What's the approach? And then, okay, great. Now what?
Yeah, no, I mean, it's a good point. I mean, look, most people that are looking at this, I mean, you and I, get overwhelmed, right? And I put myself in that category. But a lot of the people that are looking at this, I mean, they are literally taking one set of analytics out of a web system, let's say GA4, and then another set of analytics out of here and trying to put them together. So those folks are just going to get this, right? Because they're going to be looking at a single place and see everything. If you are perhaps a newer user and you're trying to figure out like what to do or what to look for, what I would say you're focusing on is understanding where in the journey things are sticking or breaking. It's probably the single most important thing. Now that you can track people all the way through, right? Where you could always understand where people abandon on a website or where they abandon on a booking engine, but you couldn't see all of those things together. And you can kind of start to see the full paths. So that's where I would be thinking to start is, understanding which paths are the most effective, i.e. from ad to booking, and which paths are the least effective along that same path, and fixing the broken ones.
Amazing, amazing. Thank you. That was a really helpful answer. You know, today's title of our conversation was from click or call to confirmation. We've covered the click part, so now let's talk call. No pun intended. We're all
Mhm.
about puns pre-show here. you know, and I think the call piece is a piece that is recently or more commonly ignored, but people still do call in to make reservations. And with that, I know that, it's an important direct booking tool as well. So Cloudbeds recently, your Cloudbeds Labs division, I think, recently introduced Engage, which is your voice driven concierge. How does this challenge the idea again that voice is dead in hospitality, and maybe what new possibilities does this type of agentic AI bring to the
Yeah,
table?
yeah, for sure. So, I mean, look, in hospitality, I mean, I've been around for long enough. I've heard the GDS is dead. I've heard this, all of these things that are supposedly dead, and then they actually are doing just fine. And I would challenge, voice is voice dead, or did it commit suicide? That's not too dark. At hotels, we started seeing a decline in voice, and we realized there were these web channels, and granted they were doing well, but we then immediately stopped putting any money into voice channels. We started, sending all of our voice calls to call centers, and almost, and that's why I say commit suicide, right? Because we kind of didn't really give it a chance to survive. But if you look at a lot of hotels, and you saw this during the pandemic when people started having very specific questions around, is your hotel open? What are the restrictions? What are the requirements? All these guys, like, voice just took off, right? And in certain segments of the industry, voice is still an incredibly viable channel producing tons of money. And in lots of other parts of the industry, yes, we have kind of trained people to that calling is a useless exercise, but people actually still want to call. We see that. So that's the first thing, right? And so, but recognizing the reality that labor costs are still very high and likely will continue for a while, and that turnover, which has always been a big number in hospitality as compared to most other industries, still remains incredibly high, right? I think I saw a stat that it's like from AHLA that's like 75% or something like that. And even for managers, it's like 25%. So very high turnover rates, right? So, we've realized, all right, this is just a tough thing to do. And so we're reacting to that. So, all right, so that's kind of sets the stage, right? So what's the difference with ours? Well, voice concierges and AI driven things have been kind of around for a little bit, right? So what we're doing by marrying that voice concierge where it can answer all the questions, et cetera, we're bringing agentic AI to bear against that. And what's cool about that is that agentic AI, which is a different branch of AI from sort of generative, if you think of generative as all about creating new content based on large data sets, agentic is about doing, right? Autonomously taking action. So think generative, you think ChatGPT or DALI, right? Agentic, think self-driving car, right? A self-driving car can't say, could you rephrase that prompt, right? There's no prompt engineering for self-driving cars. Like, it has to know, do I make a left turn or a right turn to avoid the car coming on? So agentic AI in this context means that we train on PMS or CRS data sets, and that AI can actually make a reservation. So what that means is that you can effectively take a job that had to be done by a person, or by sending a person who wanted to call, sending them to a website or to something, to a live person, and actually doing it within the AI experience.
I see. I was going to ask you how this is innovating, but you're already explaining with different kind of use cases. So my next question is, what role can a voice concierge like Engage play in improving not only booking conversion, but also upselling and personalization? You already touched a little bit, but whether at the point of search, during the stay, or even at checkout, how could you share more about that?
Yeah, of course. And so, what I would say is this. I mean, we were talking before the show. You said, "How are things doing?" And I was like, "It's been a week worth of Mondays, right?" And so I'm not having a bad day, but it's just been a long day, right? And I enjoy this. But now imagine, that that person answering the phone, right? People call out sick. People have bad days. They show up to work after, they get into a fight with their partner, right? All of these things, right? And so, they just we're understaffed at hotels. So, the person answering the phones, also has to deal with people in front of them and long queues, right? So, when we think about how Engage can help hotels capture these phone bookings, Engage represents, like, if you will, a digital employee that's available 24/7, that's consistent, meets your brand standards all the time, never calls out sick, never has a bad day, never has those problems, right? It also can be trained. You can train these AIs on call center standards. So there are actually like training manuals for call centers around how you respond to guests and how you upsell, right? And a lot of people spend a lot of money training people how to do these things like upsells and to drive repeat stays and personalization and stuff like that, which train the AI on it. You train it once, tweak it as you go along, right? That is an amazing way that these AI driven agents can increase upsell, because they're just always going to follow those protocols.
Yeah, because there's no forgetting. Like they're gonna know, for example, if I just happened to, book in May. Oh, by the way, we're going to be having our Mother's Day brunch on Sunday. Would you like to reserve a seat for $30 each guest or something, right?
100%. So they
Where
always
me, when
know.
I'm juggling the phone and like, okay, next, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Or you remember that there's that thing coming in May, but right as you're like kind of finishing taking the booking, you've seen that the line in front of you is now 4 people deep. And you're like, I'm not going to tell this person about Mother's Day brunch because I'm not trying to say everyone's forgetting, right? There's positive intent and but they just don't have that time. Might be that too.
Absolutely. I did also get the pleasure to play around a bit with Engage, and I have to say it was a enjoyable sounds strange to say that, but an enjoyable experience in the sense that it was hard to break, for one. I think only one time did I have to repeat myself. Everything I felt was really timely. And I also appreciated that right off of the bat there was that transparency, right? Like you're speaking with with AI, right? So it's like,
Right.
okay, get it. I appreciate it. But I thought that it was really good. And I have to say, another thing I noticed at the end of the booking was that she only asked me for my name and my email address. And
Right.
then she confirmed that back to me. And I thought, well, that was easy. And then I was left being like, okay, but why? Like, don't you need my credit card, or how does this work? And it actually came up in yesterday's conversation with Mark Lewis Brown. And it's like comes back to the simplicity of things, right? We
Mhm.
want to make sure that the booking, just secure the booking, and then we can follow that up. And then this also leads into, I think, the upselling, the personalization, and giving that space, right?
Yeah, I mean it's two things. It's that, and then it's also when you get into credit card data, that then kicks off a whole bunch of security protocols.
Um,
You also don't necessarily want to be, people may be a little nervous. I mean, people are just nervous about giving their credit card number over the phone to a real
right.
person half the time, right? It's saying we have something called pay by link that can eliminate that kind of a concern. And so we feel that with, at least for now, with AI, that makes the most sense as well. So, some of this will have to be tested and we'll kind of see, what breaks. Because when we look at this, if a user asks to speak to a person, that means you've broken it, right? So when I say when it
Mm,
breaks, that's breakage for me.
mhm.
So we'll see how and when and where this breaks. And we'll look to see how we can optimize for that. But yeah, that's another. So absolutely the simplicity, and then also making sure we're keeping data secure.
In how many languages is this available?
So right now it's 7, but we've tested it on more, and we think we can expand the number of languages to 7. We can also customize it to take on like the tone of a hotel, so where a hotel is located. So if a hotel's in London, you can give it a British accent. If it's in the hotels in Texas, it can get on with the y'alls and the howdies and all that sort of stuff. Also, pet peeve of mine, this does not have to be a woman's voice. I don't know why we've somehow decided that every digital AI assistant has to sound like a nice, inoffensive woman. We can make it a guy, and let's have the guys do some of this basic work as well.
Nice. I love that. I love that. We have to talk about this, and especially bringing it back to what you're so good at, and the initial thing at today's show, the interoperability piece. How does Cloudbeds ensure that your booking engine or is integrated seamlessly with things like PMS, RMS, distribution tools? And I mean, we've gone over this a couple times, but why is that more critical now than ever? And what's that piece also look like?
Yeah, so I mean, for us, our booking engine is an extension of our Cloudbeds ecosystem, right? So, if reservations are coming in through the booking engine, it's seamless. There's no sort of integration point. Reservations are just dropping immediately into the other parts of the system, and that's all there. Right. And then obviously that then feeds out to things like RMS or distribution tools or stuff like that. We do integrate with other booking engines, and most of those integrations work pretty seamlessly most of the time. But, just like any integration point can fail. I mean, no matter how reliable it is, those things do happen. And then you also have to kind of make sure that, is data going both ways and things like that. So it really, to me, comes down to give hoteliers the choice. Do they want, to use a phrase that I sometimes hate but also love, a single throat to choke? Or, are they willing, or do they think they need multiple best in breed point solutions in order to maximize their flow through, knowing that could come at a potential cost of different people to deal with, or integration points.
Right, the third way.
Yes.
And the other question I have to ask comes down to hotels sometimes still struggling with OTA dependency, or wanting to at least, maybe it's not a struggle, but at least decrease it somewhat. How do you see properties making real progress, and how should they be thinking about, balancing the OTA reach with benefits from direct bookings?
Yeah, so I mean, actually, I'll plug what I'm doing next week, which is speaking at Direct Booking Summit in Dallas, where it's a 2-day event hosted by Trip Tease, focusing all about giving hotels real actionable things that they can do in order to increase their direct bookings, right? And so, we do a State of Independent Lodging report, comes out not every year, but it's been coming out for the last couple of years. And this year, when it came out, one of the statistics I remember was branded hotels are seeing about 35% of their business come from OTAs. Independent hotels, that number is 61%. Increase, 61, almost twice. And it increased slightly in 24 from 23. And so, it's understandable, right? You don't have, these massive loyalty networks, et cetera, et cetera. I think that it almost sounds like a broken record at this point, but hoteliers have to be willing to invest the time and technology and people to use the OTAs as first time booking tools. How do you get people in the door, and then how do you engage with them to get them back? And the unfortunate thing is, this is a story we have been talking about for 10 years. The problem is that there's only so much tech that you can throw at the problem. There is tech that you can't throw at the problem, and you need to invest in that tech. But at the end of the day, you also have to have people to put at the problem, because there's some of these things are, you're always going to have people coming, even if you were the most amazing independent hotel in the world, like a brand, you're getting 25-30%, you still need to then typically ask those guests, right? So hoteliers need to make sure their booking process is as streamlined, easy to use, as highly converting as possible. Immersive Booking Engine 2.0, to throw back to the beginning of the show. And then they need to invest in the tech. So, it's not an easy thing it's not an easy problem to solve. But it's one we're just going to kind of have to continue to keep working on.
Thank
Absolutely.
you. Thank you so much for sharing those insights to those hoteliers who are watching right now. We have one final question for you. So, looking ahead, what innovations or behavior shifts do you believe will define the next phase of hotel bookings, say in 2025 and beyond?
Yeah, so I really think we are going to see the rise of AI-driven operations in hospitality. We've been talking about AI for a year and a half, 2 years, and we're starting to kind of get into that. Oh my God, is this like the next hype cycle? Is it just something we talk about, kind of like, distribution of booking engines on the blockchain, whatever that was a couple of years ago? But I really think that AI is actually different. We are seeing the early sort of things, whether it's agentic, actually making progress. We're seeing people, we're not just building better mousetraps, we're actually building whole new ways and processes. And I also think that you're going to continue to see exogenous forces continue to put pressure on hotels, right? Imagine if you're a hotel in the US that relies on seasonal labor. Can you really count over the next, few years, if policies, and I'm not talking politics, I'm talking policies, it is going to be measurably harder to get folks into work, right? And so the idea that, hotels are going to have to figure out how to leverage AI in their operations, I think is absolutely going to help define the next phase of bookings,
Wow.
because that is an easy place to apply AI.
And you could use the causal AI that you already talked about to come up with the operational AI solutioning.
Well, exactly. I mean, and that's the thing, right? Is that AI is not just generative. So we've been generative kind of got a big hype cycle, deservedly so, right? But when we talk about hotel operations, like, or what we do, generative AI does, because it's the creative side of AI. Right. So there's a lot of efficiencies that you can get if you're a marketing person, a lot of efficiencies that you can get if you're on the revenue management side and reporting and analysis and taking big data sets and helping to draw conclusions from them. But they don't help check a guest in, clean a room, those kinds of things. And that's the tip of the spear for hoteliers when it comes to reducing labor costs.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, Josh, as always, it has been a pleasure. This is a wrap of today's Dojo Live. A big thank you to you. Before we go, if our audience wants to learn about more about you, talk with you, or Cloudbeds, where can they see you, or can they connect with you and your team?
Yeah, sure. Well, I mean, if they're anywhere near Dallas, come down to Direct Booking Summit next week. I think there may still be a few spots. We'd love to see you there. You can find me on LinkedIn, cloudbeds.com. Specifically Engage is engage.cloudbeds.com. It's just a little one there, but yeah, I'm around. Send a carrier pigeon. It works, I think. Oh, there's smoke signals. You can send smoke signals. By the way, I think we have, this is live. So I think we have a new pope. I don't know who it is, but I think I saw something that we have a new pope. So send a smoke signal.
All right. I will do. Fantastic. Thank you, Josh, once again. Thank you also to our sponsor, Encora, for making such amazing conversations a possibility. Encora does partner with leading travel and technology companies to accelerate that innovation through world-class engineering solutions. And as always, if you did enjoy this conversation, and I know that you did, please be sure to follow Dojo Live for more insights on industry trends. And you can do that across a wide variety of socials, as well as our website, Dojo. dojo.live. And join us next week because our direct booking series isn't over yet. We'll kick it off again Tuesday the 13th at 10 o'clock a.m. Pacific to talk about how unified data layers are the platform for hospitality's future and how harnessing that data, the new oil, right, can fuel better bookings, pricing, and operational excellence. That's going to be with Binu Matthews, who is the director and CEO at IDS Next. So see you then, and until then, stay curious, stay innovative, and bye for now.